Welcome to the Business Blueprint Podcast, where we take you on an exciting adventure through our triumphs and challenges and failures in creating and maintaining a thriving 6, 7, and 8-figure business. Get ready to dive into our strategies, decisions, and yes, even valuable lessons we've learned from our missteps. But that's not all. We'll also bring you industry-leading guests who will provide you with their priceless insights and wisdom. Stay tuned because the captivating journey of the Business Blueprint begins right now.
Right. And that's another thing that's a great point. It's one data point. It's not the only data point, but sometimes we look at things and we think, oh, our employees are overwhelmed. We need to hire. And in a law firm, oftentimes it's like, we need to hire an attorney. And if you would actually look at the workflow and say, is this thing that we have assigned to the attorneys, for example, is this thing the highest and best use of their time? Does it require a bar card? And we say no, then we need to delegate it down. If it's a paralegal, we look at the hourly rate. Does it make sense that a person at this hourly rate would do this task? If the answer is no, we delegate it down. And you delegate it down to the lowest paid, most competent person that can do the job. Obviously, you want to delegate it to somebody that can still complete the task and has the skill set to do that. But we don't need an attorney or a paralegal standing at the copier to scan in files for 2 hours when they could be billing if we have a file clerk that could do that, that's making far less and is highly skilled to be able to master that task. Mm-hmm. So it's looking at those things. And it's not only the people that are billers, because those people in the firm, like you're talking about, a COO, they're not really billing. But what they're doing is they're freeing up and taking things from other people and from the owner and making sure that they're monitoring metrics to make sure we're hitting the goals. And so they're freeing up time of other people, which has a price attached to it, right? And they're also able to make sure that if there are flaws, they're finding them so that they can fix all of the chinks in the armor and get you closer to goal quicker. Mm-hmm. So you really need to take a good look. I know it's hard because I think all of us have some control freak tendencies in us and we want to keep hold of things. But it actually is a really poor way to get things done because it makes you overwhelmed in the minutia and not being able to think through the high level things that actually make a difference.
So one thing that I've always struggled with is kind of which thing to use. So when you talk about doing the brain dump, I like to do my little handwritten, right, notes and all of that. But then I need to put it on an electronic calendar, right, so that other people know where I am and what I'm doing. And then we also have Microsoft Office, which of course has tasks and boards and all kinds of things. And I feel like you can get lost trying to use too many tools when you're trying to create this whole calendar. What do you find is the best system or the best way to kind of streamline all of that stuff?
Well, I think, people are going to do what feels right for them first and foremost. I mean, I'm old school. I'm with you, Rebecca. You are my people. I love to do the brain dump with a pen and paper. It's cathartic. It also allows me, when I write something and read it back, my brain tends to store it. Whereas if I type it, I could be like a court reporter and just type away and have no clue what was said, right? But other people, like if I went to one of my children who would be like, why are you using pen and paper? What's wrong with you? So I think it's up to what works best for you. I do think that you need to have a paper version of the calendar, at least initially while you're planning it out. I ended up going to Amazon and buying a dry erase calendar that has 4 quarters and it has all 3 months and it goes down and I can see what's happening and how long a project is stretching out. For those people using a calendar, being able to look at what the steps are and what needs to happen at the beginning and all the way through and what needs to happen at the end and when the goal is important. And you can see that on an electronic version. I think one of the ways that you can do a better job with electronic calendars, if that is your forte, is to use a coloring system too, so that you can see all of your get monies and you can start to see it stretching over your calendar and all of your keep sanities and things that you want to do. And for those of you that are in the audience going, what in the heck is she talking about? I'm going to put something in the chat here shortly so that you can actually have a lesson on calendaring and are able to see some of those things that I'm talking about in this short snippet. But I think back to your point, Rebecca, the biggest thing is finding the thing that works for you. Start with paper because it allows you to visually see it all in one spot. It doesn't become real until you see how it plays out. And sometimes we think that something might be the highest priority or the thing that's going to be done the soonest. And then once we plan it, we find out we're wrong. So I would start with paper. If you need to go to an electronic version, use coloring and sorting. As far as managing tasks and all of that stuff, the best thing you can do is figure out when you're doing those types of things, what are the workflows that I'm involved in? What are the tasks that I'm involved in? Don't assign me to everything. Assign me to the next step. Give me the due date so I know what the expectation is. Let me complete that and then let me move on. And you're able to do that in case management systems. You're able to do that with a lot of the software you're talking about where you can actually segment it so it doesn't look like all of these tasks are blaring at you every day, but it's more so, here are the things I have to get done right now. And then the next ones will open up once I've accomplished this. You don't eat the elephant in one bite, you eat it one bite at a time.
That's one of Dan's favorite things to say. One bite at a time. One bite at a time with the elephant. Yeah, I like the big paper calendar because it helps with my brain's ability to space things out. If I know that like my kid's birthday's on a Monday, I probably don't need an important deadline that Tuesday, right? Because I'm going to be distracted and things like that. And I can't like conceive of that when I'm looking at my electronic calendar. It just doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't calculate in my brain. But when I have the paper, I get a good visual, but day in and day out, I'm usually looking at a computer screen, which makes it a little bit.
And that's a great point, because I think one of the things you have to consider is while you're, looking at your brain dump and you're thinking, okay, these are the things that are definitely me that I need to put on the calendar. These are goals. These are things that'll help me get fresh new money or save money. These are things. So make money, keep money. There are things that are going to provide sanity that I'm doing now that I shouldn't be, that now we're going to, get it all cleaned up and it'll go to somebody else. And then there are things that I just want to do, maybe a vacation or a trip or something like that, or climbing Kilimanjaro if you really are adventurous. But I think, just even looking at those things and starting to plan them out and realizing that, hey, maybe over time, this one thing that I want to get done is going to take 4 weeks in the calendar. Yeah, each step might not take, more than a day, but to get each of those steps accomplished, it's going to be a while. A great example is hiring somebody. You might want them hired by the end of Q1. They have to be making money by the end of Q2. Okay, so I need the money by the end of Q2. That means that they have to be fully onboarded by that time. So I have to start that at what point? Okay, well, before I can onboard them, I better hire them. So what does that look like? What is that whole process? We have to look at creating a job ad, putting out a job ad. We have to look at doing the interviews and all of the different parts of the interviews and all of the people that are involved in those things. We have to look at, okay, getting them hired, getting them onboarded, getting the training done, and then finally getting them to make the money. Well, if I'm looking at all of those things, it sounds very easy. Oh, I'm going to put out an ad and I'm going to hire somebody. We're talking about months, several quarters that this takes. So each thing might take a short period, but over the long run, it's going to take weeks or months in your calendar. So it's very important to be able to see those things and also see that, for example, if your child had a birthday during that time and you knew that you were going to be out of town a couple of days, now I need to extend it even a few more days, because if I am the bottleneck, I'm the person that has to make a decision or I have to be involved in a meeting and I know I'm not going to be there, I've already blown that project. So to your point, having it on paper first to really see when does it start, How does it go through? And what things is it conflicting with? So I might have to plan it back even further is going to be really important. And doing that on paper and visually allows you to see that, at least initially when you're first starting out, much better than trying to figure it out electronically. So I would definitely start with paper.
Yeah, one of my takeaways from your class, when you talked about the hiring, was, I want somebody onboarded on the end of Q1. So it takes this long, 2 weeks notice at least. So now we go back 2 weeks. Then I've got an interview on that takes 2 to 3 weeks. And I've got a job post. Well, I better start in the beginning of December at the earliest. Then it's like, what about Christmas? What about the holidays? What about all the closures we have?
Right.
Well, I better back that up to November. And what that taught me was there were so many times I was the bottleneck because I was like, well, I'm going to be out of town. So this gets pushed off a little bit further. But can you talk to us about, you brought up a little bit of the coloring system. Can you talk to us about the coloring system that you like to use?
Yeah, so I try to take each of those categories. And again, I put the thing in the chat, https://htm.live/calendar. And you're going to hear a lot about this because I know in this short window, it's hard for me to give you a lot of information and I don't want to be confusing. But when I'm looking at, okay, here are the things on my brain dump that are going to allow me to bring in fresh new money. And then I'm going to categorize all of the things on the brain dump that are within that category. And then I can start to prioritize which thing can bring me money first. And I can start to develop those. Well, when I'm going to load them into the calendar, I want them to have a different color so that I can visually see, here are the things that are going to bring money in, right? We are going to make it rain. So usually, for the get money, I do green because green is good and green is money. For keep money, we want to make it rain. So I think purple rain, I do purple. But you guys can choose your own adventure here. It's not that you have to stick with mine. We have our keep sanity. So those are the things in your brain dump that you do because you've always done them, but they're probably not something that you should do. Or if you could get them out of the way, it would actually create kind of a better environment for you, right? So like I'm less stressed, I can have more flexibility. So if there are things that would help me keep sanity, then I want those to be a little ray of sunshine. So I'm going to make those yellow. And then what I want to do, I usually pick a bold color for those, like a blue or something like that, because those are the things that maybe every year I say, this year I'm going to accomplish this and I really want to do this. Or it could be something you're doing for somebody else, because we also sometimes use things that we want to do to build relationship capital. For example, I love the ocean, hate to go in it. It's somebody else's living room. I don't belong there. I don't want a shark in my living room either. But my husband loves it. So there are times that I'm like, oh, this year I got to get back to the ocean because I have to throw that bone out there because he does so much for me throughout the year. So what you want to do may be vacation things. They may be hobbies that you've since left in the lurch because you haven't been calendaring. And so you just feel like you're on a crazy train and life is spinning out of control. You want to get back to some of those things. So making sure that those are big and bold too, so that you don't lose them in making money and saving money and all of that stuff that seems sometimes more important. Those are going to be good to have a nice bold color. But you can choose what color works for you. Just make sure that they're different so that you can identify this is the project that we're on right now. And you also see that you aren't stacking them, because it's really easy. And Charles, I bet you saw this in the calendaring workshop, whether you did it or you saw somebody else did it or both, where people start to layer the calendar. And then pretty soon I'm like, okay, so you're accomplishing everything in Q1 and nothing is happening the rest of the year, correct? And they're like, well, no. I said, okay, but that's what we have. You have 10 projects layered on top of each other. Who are all the people doing these? How much of your time is this going to take? So it allows you to think through and rethink. So like when we give you the paper calendars, we actually give you erasable colored pencils, and everybody needs them. Because when they start layering, they overburden themselves for part of the year and then are like smooth sailing the rest of the year. And they just when they step back and look, they realize there's no way this is possible. And they erase and start over. And so it really is something that you have to keep revisiting and keep adjusting. I know Dan mentioned that earlier. That's going to be important for Rebecca mentioning, looking at it and planning and really taking a step back and being able to see it. And then Charles, you've actually experienced it. So definitely, use those colors to set it apart and use paper to start.
Is there a set number of, we'll call them projects or tasks, that you would recommend to someone just to not only keep that train on time, but to keep it on the tracks so it doesn't get derailed when you're looking at everything?
Yeah, there are people that will do a brain dump and they'll have 47 things that they want to accomplish, and they all are, things that they want to accomplish immediately. And I think even just by doing the exercise, you start to see like, oh, this doesn't work. I usually say, do your brain dump. You're going to be amazed at how much stuff you actually kick off of the list. And you say, this can go to somebody else. I already know my assistant can do this. I already know I can hire this. I already know, you start to see things, and it almost in some ways is cathartic because you realize how much pressure you put on yourself that you shouldn't have. So you're going to see that initially and be surprised. Then looking at it, I say, take the first 3 or 4. Let's not take 15 in each category. The first time we do it, let's take, 3 or 4 from the list in each category and see where we would put it throughout the year. What are the things that are going to be most impactful? What are the things that are going to bring money in the quickest? What are the things that are going to be things that get you towards your goal, whatever that big, hairy, audacious goal is? And take those few things first and work on those instead of overloading yourself and then throwing the calendar out the window.
So I like a system that John Maxwell talks about, where at the end of the year, he goes back and looks at everything he did. And like, was it a thumbs up? Are we going to do it again? Or, can I leave this off next year? And that's something I want to maybe try and tackle this year once I get my strategic calendar in place. Yeah. But what do you think about like that reflection time or making adjustments? How frequently do you need to kind of go back to the calendar, or is it like it's pretty much set and then we may or may not deviate from it?
No, I think, when you do your brain dump each month, you're looking at your strategic calendar. Are there things I need to add in there now, or am I keeping this running brain dump, and as it makes sense, I add them in? And there are times that life is going to happen. I wish that when we put a calendar together, life just followed it, but it never does, right? So there are going to be things that come up. Maybe when Charles planned his calendar, he didn't know that he would be in a skiing accident and need knee surgery. Or maybe when Rebecca planned her calendar, she didn't know that she was going to win the lottery and take an amazing vacation. All of those things. Sorry, Charles, yours was negative and hers was positive. We can switch those if you want. But I just think that, we have to realize that as much as we plan, we have to be able to pivot. And if you don't plan, it's very hard to pivot, because then it's like, kind of like that cat on a hot tin roof. We make desperation decisions instead of good decisions because we're in a pickle. So the more that you can do this, and the more that you can take a step back and say, does this still make sense? Are there things that we need to adjust? Are there things that we need to change? Are there people that we've hired that are now skilled that we could bring in and delegate that we didn't have before for part of this project? Those are all things to consider as the year goes on. And heaven forbid, it happens to all of us at least once, our goals change. What I thought I wanted at the beginning of the year, by mid-year, I'm like, oh, I've already exceeded that. Or I'm not even close. Is it still smart that this is my goal, or do I need to pivot? And those are things that we're taking into account. And then the calendar needs to align.
Yeah. Tracie, we could talk about this all day long. I could talk about calendaring all day long, because in my world, it goes business plan, budget, and then strategic calendar. And all 3 of those items run together is very important. So I want to thank you for being so gracious to give us your time today, and putting the link to that class in there, because I know I'm going to watch it again for sure, because it always does good to to have a refresher on that. So again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. For everybody, if you're interested, please click the link below, see how great Tracie is when she goes through every one of these, and see how much a strategic calendar can truly help out your business and help you plan your growth for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this insightful and entertaining, be sure to hit subscribe below and join us on social media to get more insight into what we are going through each and every day.